Alright, so in keeping with the fact that I am back on YouTube and I'm pretty secure in the fact that I don't think I care that much about what people think, as per the video a couple of days ago, I'm jumping back on today to discuss Scotland. Now, I appreciate as an Englishman, you might think that's a bit of a perverse idea. And I'll be honest, international breaks, by the way, just before I get underway, there's an extension being done 2 or 3 doors down from me. There's a lot of drilling, there's a lot of banging, there's a lot of workmen shouting. So if you do hear any background noise or expletives or whatever, just let it be part of the ambience of the video, or at least try to. I just want to be able to do this. And to be honest, if I was going to postpone it for another 24 hours, the zeitgeist moves on, people stop caring about the fact that Scotland got through, or at least it doesn't have the same impact, and I want to have it as raw as possible on this Wednesday morning. I feel that this international break, that we are still in the midst of, but it's now coming to an end obviously, has been one of the most positive and enjoyable international breaks I can ever remember. I know that it's always the case whenever you get to the final international break before a World Cup or a European Championship, that there are going to be storylines and moments that you remember. But if you think back to Troy Parrott's hat-trick for the Republic of Ireland against Hungary on Sunday, a 96th minute winner for the Republic of Ireland, last gasp, they've made it into the playoffs as a consequence of that. You've got Wales putting 7 past North Macedonia yesterday, a remarkable achievement. I think North Macedonia arrived in Cardiff having not lost in this entire qualification period. They'd conceded 3 goals across all qualification games, including 2 games against Belgium. So Wales putting 7 past them was remarkable in every single sense. And to be honest, I watched the Scotland game, and as a direct result of that, I hadn't seen the Wales goals until this morning. I went onto YouTube, I found them with Welsh commentary, but I sort of let that slide. It wasn't something that was going to inhibit my enjoyment of it. And some of them were just outrageous, the strikes from Wales. A beautiful night for Craig Bellamy and the Welsh national team. But I wanted to talk primarily about Scotland today, because the game that I watched at Hampden, alongside millions of others on the TV, and obviously I think it's 60,000 odd in attendance at Hampden Park. You can correct me if I'm wrong in that in the comments. I feel like it was one of the most enjoyable international matches I've ever watched. It kicked off with the ultimate bang. Scott McTominay scoring an overhead kick in the 3rd minute. Remarkable. His arc, his story, since leaving Manchester United and moving to Naples, becoming the son of that city, helping them win Serie A under the guidance of Antonio Conte. I've not been to Naples since, I've never been there at all, but I am reliably informed by people that have, or people that live there, that he is a god amongst men in that city. His face adorns murals, it's all over merchandise, everyone worships at the altar of Scott McTominay. And, in keeping with that, I guess, he has become the lightning rod for the Scottish national team in many ways. And for him to open the scoring in such explosive fashion with the overhead kick, sparking bedlam across the whole of Hampden Park. I actually saw, just before coming down to record this video for you today, that in the celebrations he'd run to the side of the pitch in a desperate attempt to locate his mum, which is a lovely little added layer of beauty to that particular story. But we saw early on in the second half Denmark get back to level pegging from the penalty spot, Rasmus Højlund converting from 12 yards after a pretty controversial penalty call. I'm still not 100% sure that the referee should have given it. It looked to me as if the foul itself took place. Technically, Andy Robertson was on the line of the box, but the player who he fouled seemed to be outside it. Either way, the referee decided to point to the spot. They got back to level pegging, and obviously the scenario for Scotland was that they needed a win. If they hadn't got it, they would have gone into the playoffs, which obviously still would have given them the path into the World Cup in North America and Mexico this upcoming summer. But this was, in many senses, an all-or-nothing situation, because they knew that if they got the 3 points against Denmark yesterday in front of their own supporters, they would book their place there without any more fuss. And we saw a second goal from Lawrence Shankland off the bench for the Tartan Army because of a red card that came to Denmark midway through the second half. The ball was flighted in from the corner. It met Lawrence Shankland pretty much on the goal line, and he's diverted it home. It was one of those strange things watching it on TV. You immediately have that thought of whether or not he's offside, and then after a split second you realise it's impossible to be offside from the corner. It just had that feel to it, and you want, or at least I wanted, Scotland to have that moment of joy. I think that goal arrived in the 78th minute, and probably 60 seconds after the resumption of the game, we saw Patrick Dorgu poke home a second goal for Denmark. And at that stage, I don't think I was alone. Certainly, I would imagine there are plenty of pessimistic Scotsmen who will have felt the same as me, in the sense of, you've had the lead twice, you've thrown it away twice, surely that's going to be the end of it. But then, in the 93rd minute, we saw the ball fall to Kieran Tierney on the edge of the box. And the noise that greeted this goal from the entire crowd at Hampden Park was remarkable. If you go back and watch the highlights again, you hear a genuine crackle on the microphones. You hear unbridled joy in the voices of Stephen Thompson and James McFadden on commentary for the game. And, he's mobbed at the side of the pitch. He tried to, I think, keep it cool, Kieran Tierney. I think he probably struggled quite a bit to do that. And on any other night, in any other scenario, in any other normal walk of life, that would be the headline grabber. That would be the moment that everyone is talking about forevermore when it comes to Scotland. But instead, with 6 minutes added on, the referee decided to play an extra 90 seconds. There are Scots everywhere absolutely gagging for the full-time whistle, desperate for it, pleading for it. There was one particular video that I shared this morning on my social media feed where there was a voice in a pub. I won't say the 4-letter expletive, but it begins with the letter C. That's all you need to know. In the direction of the referee, and called him a cheating C. But obviously, in the seconds that followed the 97th minute ticking around, the ball fell to Kenny McLean, where he robbed it away from a Danish midfielder. And then he was met with this choice, this moment for him on a personal level, to see whether or not he could do something truly remarkable. And I penned a tweet about Kenny McLean after the full-time whistle. I might read it out for you in a minute, I'm not sure. It feels a little bit self-indulgent to do that, but maybe I will. Kasper Schmeichel, obviously desperate to be part of the Danish attack to try and get back to level pegging at 3 apiece, was out of his goal. The ball fell to Kenny McLean. He's on the halfway line. He sees Kasper Schmeichel scrambling back towards his net. And I think it was James McFadden on co-commentary who just sort of forlornly said, "Shoot, shoot." And as he said it, Kenny McLean's looked up and he's flighted a ball perfectly towards Kasper Schmeichel's goal. It's hung in the air for probably 2 to 3 seconds. It felt like a great deal longer watching it in real time. But it's hung there and eventually hit the back of the Danish net. It's given Scotland the 4-2 advantage. I think the final whistle went in the celebrations. But I've never seen anything like it. And, you look at football, you look at what it means to people. And the basic principle of the tweet that I sent about Kenny McLean was that he's a 33-year-old guy. He's had a pretty solid career professionally. I think a career that, us mere mortals would dream of. He's played for the likes of Aberdeen, he's played for Rangers, at youth level, St Mirren, Norwich. I think he's got 55 caps now for Scotland. I think it was 54 going into last night. But he's a 33-year-old guy. The last time Scotland made it to a World Cup in 1998, he was 6. He may well have some formative core memory of that. Scotland played Brazil, I believe, in their first group game of that particular World Cup. But it won't be something that is fresh in his mind. It will be sepia tinted. And there will have been a huge part of him at 33 thinking, well, I'm never going to get there. It's not going to happen for me. And that's a real shame, because I would have loved nothing more than to represent my country on the biggest of global stages. And then, fortuitously, he gets his chance. In the 22nd minute, I think, Ben Doak is taken off. He comes on to replace him. Obviously, an injury, never the ideal way to make your way onto the pitch. But even so, you've got to grasp your opportunities when they present themselves. And then, with mere seconds left on the clock, when you could have just seen out those last few delicate moments and guided Scotland through and been a hero in a sense because you've looked after the ball, you thought, no, actually, I'm going to go for it. And you flight that ball, and forevermore, Kenny McLean will be a Scottish football hero. He will be someone who is written in the history of the game. He is someone who's never going to have to buy a pint. That moment there is a sliding doors moment for Kenny McLean's entire life, let alone his footballing career. And the basic principle of my thought process over the tweet was, you can't help but be romantic about the game. You just can't. And maybe this last international break, the one that we are now coming to the end of, with Troy Parrott's hat-trick for the Republic of Ireland against Hungary that has seen them secure that playoff spot, with Scotland's victory here, with Wales putting 7 past North Macedonia, with Curacao, I believe that is how you pronounce it, the smallest nation ever at just 156,000 inhabitants to make it to a World Cup with a 0-0 draw against Steve McLaren's Jamaica in Kingston. He has actually resigned now, by the way, even though they've got a playoff to come. I look at that and I think, you've got the Premier League, you've got the riches on offer, you've got the upper echelons of the European game with the Champions League, the Ballon d'Or, the amount of money that sloshes around when you're talking about your Mbappes and your Bellinghams and your Mo Salahs, £300,000 a week wage packages, TV deals through the roof, the Saudi League, financial fair play, PSR, whatever you want to talk about. Newcastle's ownership being so rich, mind-bogglingly rich, that if they were allowed to spend freely, they would make the Premier League into a monopoly, regardless of the fact that it is surrounded by billionaires in terms of the ownership of the Premier League generally. I look at all of that, and then you completely 180 it with international football. You talk about people playing for the pride of the shirt once again. And Troy Parrott's interview post-match, following on from that 3-2 victory with the Republic of Ireland, it really struck home to me. He said, I love where I'm from. I love my country. I love the people that I live around. And obviously, that can feel a little bit sepia tinted. It can feel a little bit wishy-washy. But you only need to look at the emotion. He was talking about his mum. He broke down in tears. These are fantastic things. And I've sort of immersed myself in all of the different clips that are doing the rounds in relation to Scotland's victory last night over the last 12 hours or so. And I think sometimes, and I feel it myself occasionally, I talk a lot about me falling in love with football and just genuinely buzzing off the fact that it gives you something a bit extra, a bit of a pep in your step to people that aren't interested in football, whether they're Scottish, whether they're Irish, whether they're English, whether they're German. It doesn't matter, okay? If you're not interested in football, last night was a Tuesday night in mid-November. You're gearing up for Christmas. You might be watching something on the TV, nondescript. You head to bed at 9:30. You think, I've got work in the morning. It's going to be sleeting. It's going to be raining outside. It's a bit miserable. For people that understand football and for people that understand football culture, yesterday's victory for Scotland, their first qualification for a World Cup in 28 years, has had a cherry put on top of the cake by Kenny McLean, an individual that no one expected to be the hero when the game kicked off, coming off the bench and scoring from the halfway line to completely, uncork chaos across Hampden Park and in pubs and bars and homes all across Scotland. There will be people that have moved and emigrated, Scottish international fans who live in LA or live in Toronto or live in I don't know where. And they all will have felt that shared joy, that ecstasy, that relief, that love for their country and for that shirt. And I'm so infused with international football at this particular moment in time that I wanted to come on this morning and talk about it. I think sometimes England fans, and it's a strange dynamic really as a Palace supporter, because obviously we have had success in the last 12 months with the Community Shield, with the FA Cup, with qualifying for Europe, but it is not the norm for us. And on Football Between the Lines, the pod that I do with Flav twice a week, we were having a conversation the other day about fans of clubs like Arsenal and Liverpool and Manchester United who are starting to get small club envy because of the beauty being in the struggle, because of the journey, because of the scarcity of that success. And I feel as though as an England fan, there is a quite solid amount of that when it comes to qualification. We have just made our way through our qualification group, 8 wins from 8, 22 goals scored, none conceded. It's fantastic. It's a superb feat from Thomas Tuchel and his players, but it does leave you lacking that emotion, that moment of explosion that we saw with the Irish fans, with the Scottish fans, and to be honest, across 90 minutes for Wales yesterday with their 7-1 victory over North Macedonia. And it makes you realise, or at least it pricks that bubble and reminds you, international football is not about the big nations primarily. Yes, of course, once you get to the latter stages of a World Cup, a European Championships, a Copa America, then it is. But it's also about those stories, those moments of lifelong dreams of wanting to get there, and players like Kenny McLean grabbing the spotlight, being at the centre of the universe for a 24 to 48 hour spell. And I just wanted to come on and try as best as I could to vocalise that for you today. So hopefully I've done a decent job. If you've enjoyed this video, please do consider giving it a like, leaving a comment, or potentially subscribing to the page. I think I'm about 250 subscribers away from 15,000, which is a rather sizable number. I appreciate my hiatus for the last 6 months has probably seen that stagnate significantly, but I would like to be back on here more regularly. I would like to do more stuff like this, and if you have enjoyed it, pushing that subscribe button is only going to help me get more traction and get pushed further up the algorithm. So hopefully you're having a good day. Hopefully this soapbox rant or soapbox outpouring of joy is something that has found you well on this Wednesday, and I will look forward to speaking to you again next time. Cheers.